Everyone knows that the second daughter of the minister's residence is timid and weak. She only knows how to hide behind her sister and whimper when something happens. Even in the case of breaking off an engagement, she has no opinion at all. She lets her family make all the decisions for her. If it weren't for my biological mother's kindness, my character would have led to a bad outcome. But now, I am protected and will be married when I reach the proper age. My husband treats me like a precious gem. I can't help but feel that I am truly blessed. Although I am a concubine-born daughter, my stepmother raised me with care after my birth mother passed away. My stepmother is straightforward, and my older sister takes after her, both having fiery tempers. The two of them have always been protective of me. If anyone ever says a word against me, my sister would roll up her sleeves and give them a lesson. If anyone reports this to the family, my stepmother would smile and respond, paying gold and silver as compensation without ever admitting that my sister was in the wrong. If anyone continues to cause trouble, my stepmother would turn hostile and throw them out of the house. Because of this, my sister gained a reputation for being domineering, and my stepmother was mocked as a fierce woman. They didn't mind, but I felt very guilty. So, I stayed quiet and tried to avoid causing any trouble. Over time, I became the timid, trouble-avoiding waste that people spoke of. I imagine Zhao Chen thought of me this way too. At first, his family tried to climb up the social ladder by proposing to me. Now that his family has risen, he looks down on my status as a concubine-born daughter, betraying his previous promises. You, a concubine-born daughter, were never a match for me in the first place. How can someone so fearful and unrefined be worthy to become the mistress of the Zhao family? He canceled the engagement without reason and, in front of everyone, slandered me with his words. A woman's reputation is so important, and his actions were no different from ruining my life. But I, being tongue-tied and at a loss for words, didn't know how to rebut. My sister, in a fit of rage, drew her sword and charged toward Zhao Chen. With a crisp clang, someone blocked her attack. The young man withdrew with a single strike, standing tall and facing Zhao Chen, his back to us. Do you really think that by marrying the legitimate daughter of the Rongyang Marquis, you're now so noble? He was tall, with sharp eyebrows and starry eyes. His voice carried a mocking, carefree tone. A person who can't even admit to being unfaithful and tries to smear their former fiancé's reputation. This kind of character is truly despicable. The onlookers' eyes lit up, and they began to look at Zhao Chen with disdain. Zhao Chen, both embarrassed and angry, said, "People climb up, and what's wrong with my choice? A useless woman like her. If it weren't for her family background, who would marry her?" It seemed he wanted to prove his point. He glared at the newcomer with a tone full of disdain. "If you were him, would you marry her?" The man froze for a moment, and Zhao Chen thought he had won, a smug look appearing on his face. But then he heard a light chuckle. "Of course, I would marry her." He turned to me and said, "Right, Wan Wan?" It was indeed Chung Sizis, the troublemaker. After not seeing him for years, he returned and dug a huge hole for me. My eyes rolled back, and I fainted. In my dazed state, someone picked me up and teased Zhao Chen, "With your father's official position, you're not even worthy to appear at my wedding. So, neither I nor the Yu family will be attending your wedding." I was fainted from the shock. Chung Sizis, this troublemaker, and my sister came from the same school. He used to visit my house under the pretense of training. As a child, he was as delicate and perfect as a fairy, and because of his looks, he was often teased by others who mistook him for a girl. So, almost all the kids in the capital had felt his fists. Perhaps because of this experience and his long practice in martial arts, he grew extremely tall and muscular as he grew up, deliberately tanning his skin a bit darker than usual. Though his sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes still made him handsome, I was scared of him, having seen him fight so many times. The thought of him saying he would marry me in front of so many people, even if it was just to help me out of a situation, was rather frightening. What situation? The Iceman from the Chungwagong's mansion has already arrived. My sister's words almost made me faint again. Sister, aren't you and he childhood friends? Are you silly? She reached out and touched my forehead. So, childhood friends, childhood sweethearts, rivals in love. Chung Sizis was supposed to propose to my sister. That's what I thought, so I said it out loud. What I got in return was my sister's merciless slap on the head. What are you thinking? Me and him? We fight every time we meet, teaming up to tear each other's houses down. It shouldn't be me, right? He's the bully of the capital, and I'm as timid as a mouse. We really don't match. You don't understand. Marriage is about complementing each other. If you really marry an honest, boring man, will you just wait for him to roll your buns, squashing them flat? My sister always speaks the truth. She and my stepmother both thought this marriage would be good, so it must be. Even though I was scared, I didn't object. On the third day after I obediently embroidered the veil, Chung Sizis climbed over the inner courtyard wall. Wan Wan. He waved golden silk and silver thread, poking his head out from a plum tree. I hurriedly stood up, wanting to hide. But he caught up to me in just a few steps. We are already betrothed, Wan Wan. Why are you hiding from me? I was extremely shy. Even though we are engaged, we shouldn't meet privately. If you want to visit, you should come through the front gate. He scratched his head. If I visit formally, I'd have to fight with Chewing Tang 100 times before I can enter your courtyard. 3. They've always been like this. It's not exactly a lie. Now that the marriage is set, with my sister's temperament, even if she doesn't take action, she will still force him to call me sister before letting him go. He's tall and strong, but later on, due to his status, he'll have to lower himself in front of my sister. Just thinking about that scene, I can't help but smile faintly and lower my head. Chung Sizhou's eyes lit up, and he blurted out a straightforward compliment. Wan Wan, you look really beautiful when you smile. I didn't expect him to be so bold, and a blush spread across my face. I lowered my head even more. I clicked my tongue and muttered, so frivolous. To my surprise, his face was thick-skinned, and he leaned in again. How is it frivolous to compliment my future wife? Clearly, we're like mandarin ducks with their necks intertwined, envying everyone around us. I was both embarrassed and annoyed, wishing I could slap him. During the tugging, he grabbed my sleeve, and the butterfly wings embroidered on the cuff fluttered vividly. He praised, Wan Wan, your embroidery skills are truly remarkable. Would it be too shameless to ask for a sachet embroidered by my future wife to ease my longing? Within 3 sentences, he was back to being improper. Since you know it's shameless, why dare you ask? At the same time, a crisp female voice echoed, and a sword was drawn. Chung Sizhou barely avoided my sister's attack and hastily begged for mercy. Don't be angry. You said Wan Wan was timid and afraid of me being fierce. That's why I was trying to change my image and get closer to her, right? My sister didn't stop attacking, her voice full of resentment. This change of yours is this frivolous, dissolute appearance, joking with her? Chung Sizhou, do you think the daughters of the Chu family are toys for you to mock and amuse yourself with? My sister's words pressed him so hard that his moves became chaotic, and in his carelessness, his sleeve was torn. My sister's eyes brightened, and her attacks became even more intense. Since she was 12, she had never won against Chung Sizhou. Now, seizing the perfect opportunity, she would not let him go. Left with no choice, Chung Sizhou had to flee in panic, but not before shouting, Wan Wan, I'll be back. A moment later, my sister returned. It seemed like her pursuit had been in vain, and her expression wasn't very pleasant. I poured her tea, and she drank it in one gulp. Wan Wan, you are not allowed to make a sachet for Chung Sizhou. He doesn't deserve such treatment. As she spoke, she lovingly stroked the sachet on her waist. It was one I had given her, embroidered with a kite, symbolizing soaring and freedom. Are you jealous, sister? I tilted my head and laughed lightly. My sister's face turned red, but she quickly admitted, so, what if I am? Even if you marry him, he still can't come before your family. I smiled and responded, of course. In Wan Wan's heart, you'll always come first. My sister was as happy as a child. She was like this, fiery, but easy to please. It was just that because of her protectiveness over me, her fierce reputation had kept her unmarried until now. 17 already, if you don't get married soon, you'll be an old maid. Unlike my mother's urgency, my sister was much more relaxed. So, what if I'm an old maid? Our family can afford to support me. But when my mother said, "You're the older sister. If you don't get married, Wanwan's marriage can't be settled," my sister's expression became serious. I understand now. With that, she turned around and left in a hurry, leaving my mother in a daze. Wait, what do you understand? She really should have finished explaining.
5.
The next day, we understood my sister's intention. She brought someone tied up to our parents. I'm marrying him. The person looked up, fair-skinned, with red lips and handsome features. It was none other than the talented scholar, Song Yenji, whom the emperor had personally appointed as the third-place scholar just a few days ago. Rumor had it that Song Yenji had originally been the top scholar, but due to his outstanding appearance, the emperor, upon meeting him, insisted on giving him the third-place title. As a result, he was compensated and immediately arranged to join the Hanlin Academy as a close minister of the emperor. Even though my father was a high-ranking official, he didn't want to provoke this rising star, let alone tie him up and force a marriage like this. My father rolled his eyes and nearly fainted. He stood up, personally untied the ropes, and apologized repeatedly. This little girl was impulsive and offended Song Yenji. Since she's still young, please don't mind her. Song Yenji stretched his wrist and, with a half-smile, said, "If I remember correctly, Miss Chu has already reached the age of majority last year." My father looked awkward and couldn't speak. But my sister wasn't having it. So, what if I tied him up? Isn't it a story in the books? If someone saves you, you repay them with your life. At that moment, I remembered where I had seen Song Yenji before. A few months ago, I had encountered him on the street being kicked out of a shop. He had just arrived in the capital, his money was stolen, and he had no place to stay. There were many onlookers, all sighing, but no one helped him. It was my sister who threw out a silver tael to pay for his lodging. At that time, he asked for her name, but I stopped him, saying a young lady's name shouldn't be casually shared. My sister had helped him out of kindness, but didn't say much to him. Who would have thought that months later, my sister would use this favor to make him marry her?
6.
But when it comes to love, it must be mutual. A forced marriage is never sweet. Just as I was about to speak up and advise, Song Yenji beat me to it. So, does this mean, no matter who Miss Chu helped, now you will force them to marry you? His words didn't sound quite right. Before I could figure out the issue, my sister cut him off firmly. Of course not. At least, they must be half as good-looking as you before I'd be willing to marry them. Seeing my sister pretend to think seriously, a barely perceptible smile flashed in Song Yenji's eyes. Ridiculous. Seeing my sister speak without a filter, my father urgently scolded, "Hurry," and apologized to Song Yenji. He was signaling her with his eyes. My sister awkwardly refused to speak. Suddenly, Song Yenji took her hand. "Since Lord Chu wants to express his apology, why not just promise Miss Chu to me? I come from a poor family and should name so high. However, Miss Chu has done me a favor. As her benefactor, I should fulfill her wishes. Even if it means carrying the stigma of attaching myself to a powerful family, I cannot be an ungrateful person." This sudden twist stunned everyone. Just like that, he agreed. 7. Song Yenji left a written invitation, stating that he would come to formally propose in 3 days. Then, he gracefully departed. We were left confused, as though we were dreaming. Only my sister, holding the invitation, wore a satisfied expression. "Sister, how can you treat something as serious as marriage so frivolously?" Although Song Yenji was a talented scholar, his character was unknown. Moreover, we hadn't considered his age or whether he had any past engagements or romantic entanglements. I asked him, and he said no. You believe him just because he said so? At this, both I and my father grew worried. No, I'll send someone to investigate his background immediately. Father, eager to investigate, was not the only one concerned. My mother also joined in, preparing my sister's dowry. I had already prepared a dowry list for Wanwan, so now it's easier. I'll simply add a portion to yours. She wasn't speaking behind my back. She had treated me very well, and my dowry was generous, fully supported by the family treasury. Even my aunt's dowry had been entirely given to me. No matter what, I would never shamelessly covet her dowry. Both of our marriages came in a rush, and neither was to a noble family. This created quite a stir in the capital. There were whispers that both my sister and I were mismatched, one weak and the other strong, and that we were unfair to the good men involved. Ching Si-hu couldn't help but ask, "Is Song Yenji really going to marry Chuing Dang?" I shot him a sidelong glance. Of course, it's true.
Why?
Do you think my sister is unworthy of him? If he dared think that, I would definitely fall out with him. It's one thing to look down on me, but I could never tolerate anyone belittling my sister.
8.
Of course not. She's your sister. Although her temper isn't great, her looks are flawless, and her family background is solid. Song Yenji is the one who is lucky to marry her.
Exactly.
Scholars are too complex. If he's not sincere, your sister will suffer. Like Zhao Chen. Once he gained power, he was heartless and almost caused you harm. Fortunately, I returned to the capital just in time to prevent that and ensured our good fortune. While speaking, he subtly glanced at me. Clearly, he was waiting for the right moment to drop some hints. I had no feelings for Zhao Chen to begin with, and the marriage had been arranged by my aunt's family. My father valued his scholarly talents, so he reluctantly agreed. However, there was still an engagement, which naturally caused Ching Si-hu to be concerned. He, being such a rough character, trying to be subtle and seek reassurance, was both obvious and amusing. I wasn't interested in explaining anything to him. So, I pretended not to understand his hidden meaning, furrowing my brow as I thought about my sister and Song Yenji's situation. Disappointment flashed in his eyes, but after a moment, he perked up. If Wanwan is worried, why don't we find a chance to test Song Yenji? Testing him was certainly necessary. However, Ching Si-hu's straightforwardness might make things worse. I definitely couldn't involve him. But before I could think of how to approach the situation, the twist came unexpectedly.
9.
The June Lotus viewing feast was always an event where the capital's noble ladies gathered. Ching Si-hu led the men, and they all came together. In this dynasty, gender separation was not strict, and the feast was a casual occasion for unmarried men and women to meet. However, I was still surprised when Zhao Chen approached me. Our engagement had been annulled, and the day had been an embarrassing mess. No matter how I looked at it, we were no longer in a position to calmly reconnect. Wanwan, it's been a long time. You've lost weight. I stepped back in surprise. His complexion was pale, his frame gaunt, and he no longer had the elegance he once did. The term lost weight fit him far more than me. It seemed my retreat had hurt him, and there was a trace of sorrow in his voice. You really dislike me that much? I panicked inwardly. If anyone saw this, it would be hard for me to explain. Master Zhao, we're strangers now. Please do not address me by my given name again. I hurriedly spoke and turned to leave, but he stepped forward, blocking my path. Wanwan, please don't treat me like this. I regret it. You shouldn't marry Ching Si-hu.
10.
Not marry? With one sentence, he thought he could ruin my marriage? I stared at him in shock. I might be meek, but I wasn't stupid. Not to mention Zhao Chen's indecision and the fact that he had once schemed to deceive my family, causing great harm. Had he forgotten his previous betrayal? Just based on his family background and looks, what confidence did he have to think he could compare to Ching Si-hu? But here, in such a secluded place, I was alone and didn't want to provoke him. After all, when a dog is cornered, it might lash out in desperation. I could only lower my head, appearing troubled. Even if you regret it now, my marriage to him has already been arranged. How can it be changed? I quickly shot him a glance, my eyes filled with tears. We were never meant to be.
Please don't force it.
If you're happy, I won't interfere. But he, Chingsihu, is just a brute. How can he understand your heart? Spring is for watching clouds roll by, summer is for hearing the cicadas, autumn is for admiring falling leaves, and winter for picking plum blossoms. Does he understand the beauty of these seasons? He only knows how to wield weapons and can never connect with your soul. I tilted my head and rolled my eyes. Sorry, but I didn't appreciate the things he mentioned. I could occasionally enjoy them, but to indulge in them year-round and pretend to be sophisticated? That wasn't my style. I know you understand me well. But marrying into the Duke of Cheng's family is already a high match for the Chu family. Even if my father wouldn't agree to annul the engagement, how could I let you offend the Duke of Cheng's family for me? The implication was clear. This action would not earn my family's support and could even provoke both the Duke of Cheng's and the Marquis of Rongyang's wrath, endangering Zhao Chen's life. 11. He understood. There was a look of hesitation on his face. Just then, the sound of footsteps approached from a distance. He turned and fled without a glance back. A truly spineless man. Retreating to advance, using others to do your bidding. Looks like the outside world's opinion of Miss Chu Air is up for debate. The person speaking was Song Yenji. He had been lurking nearby, watching everything unfold, but didn't show himself to help. There was a smile in his eyes, but it was cold. Cheng Sizhou was right. Scholars indeed had 1,000 tricks up their sleeves. Song Tianhua, you flatter me, I said with a smile, but my small trick is only to protect myself, never meant to harm others. The timing was right, so I decided to drop the facade and probe him directly. I recently learned that Zhao Chen is your second Mrs. maternal nephew. Your aunt, using your mother's name, has worked hard to make this marriage happen. But then, the legitimate daughter of the Rongyang Marquis, who had been close to you, suddenly took a liking to Zhao Chen's literary talents. Though she was unaware of your previous engagement with him, how odd is that, really? I lightly twisted a handkerchief between my fingers. There were many misunderstandings. But Zhao Chen did cancel the engagement. As a woman, how could I control others' thoughts?
12.
Of course you can. Just like when you were called off the marriage, all you needed to do was shed a tear, and Miss Tang would have intervened, publicly chastising Zhao Chen, making the annulment scandalous, leaving Zhao Chen with nothing to gain. And you, merely the innocent victim of his unfaithfulness. Even without Cheng Sizhou's intervention, your future marriage wouldn't be impacted much. Good ideas, good calculations. As he spoke these words, Song Yenji's expression grew colder. Outsiders still think the second miss is meek and easily deceived. Even I almost misjudged her. Song Tianhua, you're too modest, I replied, dropping my smile. But hasn't it all been seen through already? When it comes to scheming, I'm nowhere near as clever as you. Today, let's say everything's been said, and let's get to the point. What is it you want, Song Tianhua? Overly clever thinking can easily turn into excessive plotting. I couldn't let my guard down with him either. He snorted. I have no interest in knowing what kind of person Miss Chu is. If Miss Tang cares for you, I'll protect her. But if I find out you're using Miss Tang to hurt her, I'll make you regret ever being born. I was stunned. So this warning, with both softness and hardness, is because you're worried I might harm Miss Tang? Miss Tang is innocent and impulsive. Unlike you, who's more calculating, I just want you to know someone will protect her, and you shouldn't think about hurting her. Hold on, big brother me? Hurt Miss Tang? You've been reading too many novels. Wait, isn't the point here that you should stop bullying my sister? Same words go to Tianhua. If you dare to hurt my sister in the future, I, Chu Suiwan, will not rest until I meet you in the afterlife, even if it means my bones are turned to dust. 13. After making such a threatening remark, we both withdrew our sharp edges. He was guarding against me, all for Miss Tang. If he truly cared for her, I'd still be willing to accept this brother-in-law. Song Yenji seemed more relaxed as he spoke again. Speaking of Zhao Qin, with your attitude toward him just now, anyone who didn't know might have thought you still had lingering feelings for him. That marrying Qing Xizhou was just a matter of circumstance. The topic shifted suddenly, and I was about to say something when I looked up and saw Qing Xizhou coming over. He just happened to overhear Song Yanji's words. At that moment, his expression froze, his eyes reddened. Song Yanji gave a slight bow before leaving gracefully. I finally realized what had happened. That sly fox had set me up. I opened my mouth to explain, but when it came to mind games, I could speak eloquently, but with Qing Xizhou, I couldn't utter a single dishonest word. I had become tongue-tied. Finally, he spoke first. Did you meet with Zhao Qin just now? I nodded. You spoke to him? I nodded again. Do you still think about him? I shook my head frantically. No, not at all, not in the slightest. But the person before me clearly wasn't listening. Tears fell from his eyes unexpectedly. So, you really still like him? 14. Sigh. I sighed. Sigh. I turned around and sighed again. Wanwan, if you're bored, why not help me stitch the dowry? Miss Tang was struggling with her embroidery. She was good with weapons, but had no luck with a tiny embroidery needle. Already frustrated, hearing my repeated sighs made her irritable. I threw down the embroidery hoop and couldn't hold it in any longer. Miss Tang, don't you think something's missing these days? Missing what? She didn't even lift her head, and her thread was in a tangled mess. Don't you think it's been a long time since we've seen Qing Xizhou? She gave me a doubtful look. That troublemaker's not here, isn't it good? You're not missing him, are you? No, not at all. I stammered, my face burning. Miss Tang didn't know that he left with a misunderstanding. After all these days, it seemed like he had other plans in mind. Maybe an annulment or something. Though this wasn't the first time facing an annulment, just thinking of it being Qing Xizhou made my heart ache inexplicably. Miss Tang, if someone made Qing Xizhou unhappy, how should I apologize? You made him unhappy? Miss Tang saw right through me. I grimaced and briefly explained what I could. She laughed so hard, she almost fell over. It's just a misunderstanding. Why apologize? He should know that my little sister isn't so easy to marry. 15. Miss Tang, stop teasing me. I was getting anxious. Look at you, you really care, huh? Alright, since he always wanted a sachet, why not stitch one for him? That should clear up any misunderstandings. Miss Tang said this awkwardly. I understood. If I really stitch it, would you not feel bad? Of course, it would be uncomfortable. But in the future, you'll be husband and wife, sharing a lifetime together. This, I understand clearly. Miss Tang admitted it boldly. I leaned on her and pouted. Then I won't stitch the sachet. How about I make a tassel instead? What do you think? It's just a handmade item after all. I can understand the logic. After finally balancing things out, Qing Xizhou still didn't meet me. He only sent gifts through others every now and then. I couldn't quite figure out what he was thinking. If he was still angry, he wouldn't be doing these things, but if he'd made up his mind, then going so long without seeing me didn't match his usual character. Maybe he's preparing some surprise for you, Miss Tang said with certainty. I understood. It seemed like they were planning something together. 16. This surprise truly caught me off guard. On our wedding night, when the bride's veil was lifted, I almost thought the groom had been replaced. His facial features hadn't changed, but his complexion was as fair as jade, making him appear even more delicate than many women at first glance. I had always known that Qing Xizhou deliberately tanned himself when he was young due to past experiences, but I never expected that when he returned to his original fair complexion, he would look so stunning, almost enchanting. If he went to the battlefield now, he'd probably need a mask, like the ancient Lanling Wang, to intimidate the army. When I stared at him in a daze without speaking, Qing Xizhou showed a hint of unease. Does my lady not like it? Once he noticed that Wanwan still harbored some lingering feelings for Zhao Qin, he became frustrated. Helplessly, he sought advice from Chu Yingtang, who told him that Wanwan liked beautiful people and beauty was not limited by gender. You would be much more handsome than Zhao Qin if you returned to your original complexion. By then, Wanwan would naturally only have eyes for you. Thus, he endured longing and didn't meet Wanwan for months. He even asked his mother for some skin-whitening remedies to use internally and externally. He worked diligently and eventually saw results. Now, Wanwan doesn't like it? 17. I could hear the grievance in his voice. I quickly explained, "No, I do like it. I was a bit surprised. After the change in your complexion, my husband doesn't look like a warrior anymore. Now you seem to have more of a scholar's air." Although I expressed my happiness, after a brief smile, his face darkened and his eyes filled with tears. "Chu Suiwan, who do you take me for?" He suddenly snapped, slammed the door, and left. His back seemed filled with deep grievance. I was left bewildered, at a loss. When the red candles burned out, he still didn't return to the room. I could only lie down and fall asleep alone. I was thinking of asking my sister tomorrow, how could this man's mind be so changeable? More difficult to read than a woman's. 18. The next morning, I was troubled, thinking I wouldn't be able to join him to pay respects to the in-laws. Then I saw him, already waiting at the door, his eyes dark with exhaustion. "Let's go. Don't keep your parents waiting," he said in a calm tone, giving off an air of not wanting to discuss anything further. I didn't say much, just followed the proper formalities. After sending him off with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law called me for a talk. "Wanwan, I apologize for yesterday." It was no secret that Chung Sis-ho had stayed in the study room on our wedding night, and she, as the head of the household, was aware of it. I was surprised when she didn't reprimand me, but instead looked at me thoughtfully. I don't dare say I was wronged, but I don't understand what made my husband upset. This marriage was arranged in a muddled way by him to help me, but from our interactions, it was clear that he didn't have ill intentions toward me. I really couldn't figure out what I had done wrong to be left alone on our wedding night. My mother-in-law hesitated, almost spoke, but swallowed her words, sighing heavily. "This is not your fault. It's this foolish boy's inferiority complex." I was even more confused hearing this. Chung Sis-ho, the eldest son of a prestigious noble family, a future duke, a young general full of vigor, pride, and arrogance, he had an inferiority complex? 19. It's a long story. Chung Sis-ho was sickly when he was young, and since the Chung family built their reputation on martial arts, his father begged Master Shu Ching-ha to take him in as an apprentice. I knew this. My sister was also a disciple of Master Shu. Originally, they hoped it would make him stronger and healthier. But who knew he would be a martial arts genius and master the art in just a few years? At 10 years old, he returned to the capital and was formally made the heir, visiting his fellow disciples home on the way. That was when I first met Chung Sis-ho, a handsome young boy, as delicate as porcelain. My mother-in-law glanced at me meaningfully. It was during this return trip that he suddenly started talking about giving up martial arts for literature. But he wasn't cut out for studying. He memorized classics and historical texts, but still couldn't write a decent essay. After many failed attempts, he cried out of frustration. I noticed something was off, so I probed him. That's when I found out he wanted to impress his fellow disciple's younger sister, but she was quiet and loved reading, not interested in swordplay. He wanted to study just to show off, but his ambitions fell short, and his heart was broken. Eventually, he gave up on the idea. I was moved by this story. I never expected that, without my knowledge, this was the past he had hidden. I remembered that he often brought food and trinkets when visiting my sister, but I never knew it was for me. But at the time, I was only 8. If he had thoughts about me back then, it would have been too much.
20.
My mother-in-law seemed to read my thoughts and chuckled softly. He was only 10 back then. He didn't understand love. He probably just thought you were cute and wanted to get closer. But as you grew up together, like childhood sweethearts, his feelings for you changed. He planned to ask for your hand once you were of age. Who knew Zhao family would appear and take the lead in arranging a marriage? This brat even thought of stealing you away. But the rumors about you two being in love and writing poetry made him give up on that idea. He thought you liked poetry and scholars, and he, with his martial background, wasn't good enough for you. No wonder. He thought I liked Zhao Chen. That's why he had been misled by Song Yenji's words that day. Yesterday, it was probably that comment about Scholar's heir that made him overthink and snap. This fool, like the characters in storybooks, only listens to half of the conversation. If he had heard Song Yenji say how I plotted against Zhao Chen, he would have known that I had no interest in that opportunistic boy, let alone liking him. 21. I'm not speaking for him, my mother-in-law said. He deserves everything that's happening to him right now. But after all, he's my son, and I don't want him to mess things up so much that he loses the wife he finally got. Just know, Wanwan, that his heart is with you. His awkwardness and acts are his own issues. Give him time, but don't spoil him too much. A glimmer of schadenfreude appeared in my mother-in-law's eyes as she said, He's been trouble for me since he was little. It's time someone dealt with him. With her support, I felt relieved to leave Qingxizhou to his own devices. So, when he awkwardly wanted to stay in the bedroom, I had someone pack up his things and dump them in the study. He liked to daydream, didn't he? He'd casually guess my thoughts and throw accusations at me. Did he think being in love with me was such a big deal? I remembered well the grudge I held from the wedding night when I was left alone in the room. I kept my distance from him up until the third day after the wedding. Not only did my parents greet me at the door early, but my older sister also returned specifically to meet me. She had married 2 months earlier, and with her and Song Yenji still in their honeymoon phase, he naturally returned with her. With them around, the distance between Qingxizhou and me seemed even more glaring. My parents were worried, and my sister kept asking questions. But how could I explain to her that all of this had been caused by her husband?
22.
I seized the opportunity and confronted Song Yenji. You caused all this trouble. Now you deal with it.
He refused.
Why should I care if your marriage is in turmoil? If you hadn't said all those ambiguous things, he wouldn't have suspected that I was interested in someone else, causing all this trouble. Aren't you afraid I'll tell my sister? He sneered. What a joke. You and Ah Tang are a married couple. How could she get angry over a few words from you? Besides, how could she trust someone who's so two-faced and scheming? Do you really want her to know your true nature? Why wouldn't she? My sister stepped forward, hands on her hips, angry. Who are you to make judgments about my little sister? She's always been delicate and weak. If she didn't learn to be a little crafty, would she just sit there and let people take advantage of her? What's wrong with a bit of scheming? I spoil her, I pamper her. I'm the one who allows it. Like a firecracker, my sister exploded into a tirade, not holding back. She grabbed Song Yenji's ear, imitating how her mother had once scolded my father. In an instant, the scholar-like image of the top scholar was gone, and he was wincing, begging for mercy. Madam, please calm down, I was wrong. I'll apologize to the second sister and her husband right away.
23.
After Song Yenji explained, the misunderstanding from that day was finally cleared up. However, new problems quickly followed. The matter of my scheming against Zhao Chen went against my usual character. The less likable parts of my real personality were laid bare in front of Qingxizhou. He stayed silent, showing no emotion, neither anger nor joy. Finally, as we got into the carriage to return home, I couldn't help but speak up. Now you should know that I have no feelings for Zhao Chen. But I'm also not the weak, helpless girl you imagined. If you feel deceived, we can part ways. After all, we haven't even really been married yet. Once we separate, marrying someone else won't affect us. You wish. Suddenly, he became furious, leaning forward to kiss me, forcefully pressing his lips against mine. This kiss was chaotic, with teeth and tongues clashing in a wild mess. I pulled away, feeling pain in my mouth. But when I looked at him, his eyes were red, and he looked so pitiful that it was hard to tell who had forced whom. Chu Suiwan, are you always going to push me away? You already knew how I felt. You know I would never divorce you. So you just casually ignore me. Today, it wasn't about explaining yourself. It was more about getting back at me, using Song Yenji to create more trouble and deliberately bringing it to Chewing Tong's attention. You didn't even ask what I originally thought. How do you know that I didn't already know your true self?
24.
His words hit me like a blow, leaving my head spinning. But the last sentence I heard clearly struck a chord in me. What do you know? 3 years ago, I witnessed you bribing Miss Sun's maid. My heart skipped a beat. At that poetry gathering, I didn't know how to hold back my sharp edges. Being young and impetuous, I stole the spotlight from Miss Sun, the eldest daughter of a Sun family. She insulted my status as a concubine's daughter in front of everyone, using harsh words. In anger, my sister argued with her, and things got physical. At that time, my father's position wasn't high, and despite Miss Sun being the one to start the trouble, my sister was the one who got labeled as domineering. To defend my sister's reputation, I humbled myself and went to apologize, bringing with me the ointment I had painstakingly obtained. This ointment was supposed to heal wounds, reduce swelling, and improve skin texture. However, it couldn't touch pear blossoms or the like. Otherwise, it would have the opposite effect and ruin the skin. Miss Sun's face swelled up like a pig's head. She, of course, was furious and refused to let it go. But the ointment wasn't toxic. Since we had no personal interactions, how could I have known about her burning preferences? The matter eventually died down. However, because of the repeated bullying from Miss Sun, I repeatedly withdrew and became seen as a pushover. She, in turn, earned the label of being spoiled. Neither of us ended up in a good light. I had always thought that no one knew about this, but to my surprise, Cheng Sizhou had actually seen me slip silver to the maid.
25.
I know what you're trying to do. Dr. Zheng also followed my instructions and added the incompatible ingredient. But even if you're not kind, even if you're calculating, so what? Just like Chewing Dang said, you have no strength to hurt a chicken. Your little tricks are just to protect yourself. Those who truly care about you will never fear that you will use such tricks against us. Chu Suiwan, I care about you. Whatever I've done, whatever I will do, you are still you. And right now, although I hate your indifference, I can't help but feel affection for you. With those words, Cheng Sijue stared at me intently. His gaze was direct and intense. My ears burned with heat. I had always thought I was careful, hiding my true thoughts well. Little did I know, both my older sister and Cheng Sijue had already seen through me. They didn't despise me or fear me. They accepted and doted on me. Life is like this. What more could I ask for? Cheng Sijue, it's not that I don't care about you. Apart from my sister, you're the person I care about the most. I leaned in and kissed his cheek. That night, as the red candles burned out, the room was filled with spring warmth. 26. After our wedding night, Cheng Sijue became even more clingy. Especially after my sister sent the news that she was pregnant, he practically wanted to keep me in bed every day. Good Wan, why don't we have one too? I sighed in frustration. It wasn't until the arrival of the Keishui that I finally got a few days of peace. But then a guest arrived. It was Zhao Chun, who had come to the Chengguo Gong's residence. It turned out that he had offended the Rongyang Marquis household, and his career prospects were bleak. So, like many others, he turned to business. He was bold enough to get involved in the salt and iron trade. Just when the new minister of the Ministry of Revenue took office, he was arrested as a typical example. Wan, for the sake of our childhood friendship, please help me. The salt and iron business was under his half-brother's name, so it was only a matter of time before he was caught. So he was in a panic. But why had he come to me for help? When I asked, Cheng Sijue chuckled lightly. Of course, because that new Minister of Revenue is Chewing Tong's husband, Song Yanji. So it was my brother-in-law. Illegal salt and iron trade is a crime punishable by death and exile. Even if I begged my brother-in-law to spare you, that would be against the law. How can Zhao Gongzi have the face to talk about our friendship? 27. The engagement was something I had planned for, but his words and actions were heart-wrenching. He had fallen so low, and it would be kind of me not to kick him while he was down. Yet he still dared to ask for my help. It was simply wishful thinking. Seeing my sharp words, Cheng Sijue's smile grew even wider. He wrapped his arm around my waist and mocked Zhao Chen. On the day of the engagement, Zhao Gongzi kept belittling my wife's background. Now, he's groveling before the person he once looked down on, begging for his life. How does the proud Zhao Gongzi feel about this? Zhao Chun, embarrassed, turned red in the face and still bowed deeply. Madam Chung, everything in the past was my fault. Please have mercy and help me just once. His ability to bend and stretch proved he was a ruthless man. I absolutely could not help him. If he survived, this humiliation would definitely be etched in his heart, and it was inevitable that he would seek revenge when the time was right. Chung Sijue clearly understood this and ordered for Zhao Chen to be kicked out of the residence. A few days later, Zhao's family was raided. The main culprit was executed, and the accomplices were exiled. They completely disappeared from the capital. I thought this was just a brief episode. But to my surprise, months later, on my way to visit my sister, an old woman suddenly threw herself in front of my carriage, almost trampled by the horse's hooves. 28. She was old and frail, with a haggard face, and hoarsely cried out, "Miss, my poor miss, you must avenge your mother." She claimed to be my mother's wet nurse and showed me a crescent-shaped jade pendant that matched the one around my neck. Although Miss was born to the second wife of the Lin family, she was raised delicately and promised to marry early. When the eldest daughter of the first wife was pregnant, the whole family joyfully went to visit her. Then they came back and told Miss she would be married to the Chu family as a concubine. Everyone said that Miss climbed into her brother-in-law's bed for wealth and status. But it was actually that man from the Chu family, drunk and forcing himself on Mississippi. To cover up the shame, they forced her to marry as a concubine. I originally thought, since the Chu family was wealthy and the madam was of the same clan, if they treated Miss well, I would accept her being a concubine. But who would have thought that the whole family was sweet on the outside but bitter inside? After learning Miss was pregnant, they had already made their plans. My heart sank, and I had a premonition of what she was about to say. As expected, her voice grew even more sorrowful. They bribed the midwife and planned to keep the child. My mind buzzed, and for a moment, I was blank. In my memories, I had never seen my stepmother. My real mother had mentioned her before, saying she was a younger half-sister from the same clan, weak in health, and passed away shortly after giving birth to me. No one ever mentioned how she came into the household. And I was indeed only 1 year younger than my elder sister. With my father's character, he would never take a concubine during my stepmother's pregnancy unless he had been forced. There must be some hidden truth in the matter. If what you say is true, why have you kept quiet for so many years and only revealed everything now? She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Miss is gone, and the Lin family is unwilling to offend the Chu family over a concubine, so they all pretended to be deaf and mute. I'm just a servant. What can I do? Moreover, little miss, you're still in the Chu family's hands. Now that you've married into the Duke's residence and are no longer under their control, only now am I able to tell you the truth. Please, little miss, you must avenge your real mother. 29. The next day, I returned to my maternal home with Chung Sijou. My older sister and her husband also came upon invitation. With everyone gathered, I called the wet nurse into the hall. Please, Nanny, repeat what you told me yesterday. Her eyes scanned the room, full of resentment, and she repeated the previous words without any omission. The first to become furious was my father. He puffed up his cheeks, glaring with anger, stomping his feet. Damn the Lin family's second branch. They would sell their own daughter for wealth and status. If it weren't for Cheongyang's kindness, knowing the trick, she still allowed Erwin into the family. If not, they probably would have drowned this illegitimate daughter in the pond. My older sister, pregnant, drew her sword and unsheathed it. I'll kill you, you old wicked woman. Song Yenji, flustered, neither dared to stop her nor embrace her. My stepmother, however, remained surprisingly calm, turning her gaze toward me. Since you brought her here, you must have your own thoughts. I slowly rose and knelt. Mother, I do have something to say. At first, I had believed her words. After all, logically and chronologically, everything she said seemed to add up. So, you no longer believe it? Yes, I no longer believe it. You raised me for 16 years, and my older sister protected me for 16 years. In my heart, you two are my most important family. If I doubt your sincerity based on a few words from others, that would be too ungrateful. Although the favor of being raised is heavy, the favor of birth is also important. Therefore, last night, I asked my husband to investigate the old events with my brother-in-law. I hope you forgive me, Mother, for taking matters into my own hands. My stepmother sighed. Get up. I never intended to involve you in the old matters. 30. Back then, my aunt had not climbed into bed with anyone. My father had indeed been schemed against. But what facilitated it all was my aunt's older sister-in-law. She was also Zhao Chen's maternal aunt. The nanny kept saying she was my biological mother's wet nurse, but she was actually bought off by her older sister-in-law, who drugged her drink and sent her into a prearranged room. If it weren't for your collusion with others, she wouldn't have fallen for the trick. Such a treacherous person, pretending to be a loyal servant in front of us. Chung Sizhou cut to the heart of the truth. Song Yenji added, You're causing trouble now because Zhao's family is in trouble and the Chu family turned down Zhao Chen's request for help. The grandson who worked as his book boy was exiled to the frontier, and you're upset. The nanny lowered her head, not rebutting. When she was dragged away, she suddenly reached out and grabbed my skirt. I truly pity the young lady. She had a hard time in the house, and she even saved up her private funds to help me marry a daughter-in-law. She was so young and naive, not realizing that once you marry into a high family, reputation doesn't matter. She had her whole life to rely on. I just didn't expect her to die. I looked at her, my gaze filled with complexity. But the one who killed her was you. My aunt and her original fiancé had mutual feelings for each other. Her family wanted to sell her for a good price, so they allowed her older sister-in-law to scheme against her. She knew she had no choice. She was grateful that her elder sister gave her a way out, but she didn't want to be a wedge between her and her husband. She didn't die from childbirth. She died after giving birth to me, unable to resolve her grief, and passed away in sorrow. 31. After this matter, my older sister asked me, Didn't you ever suspect stepmother after the nanny's words? I'm sure you never doubted her sincerity. I replied firmly, never. If stepmother hadn't wanted it, my aunt couldn't have entered the house. And her temperament was such that if she disliked someone, she would directly express it with a cold face. She couldn't pretend one way on the surface and act another way behind the scenes. This is something my older sister and stepmother share. I feel like you're not praising us. My older sister muttered. Outside the hall, a few men gathered under the shade of a tree, playing chess and chatting. My stepmother flipped through a book, murmuring about names for the baby in my sister's belly. My older sister snacked, and I held a cup of flower tea in my hands. The years are peaceful, the present life stable. How wonderful,